My name is Scott Kester, and I'm a concept designer from Borderlands 1 and 2.
It's a big gamble to change the art style so late in development for the first one. I mean, can you believe your luck that that's such a gamble paid off so kind of fruitfully?
Yeah, I mean, it was a big risk. There was a handful of people. I was one that was sort of in part had a handle in when we did that shift over, and it was one of those things that was a little dangerous. It was a little scary, but we also knew the look just wasn't really doing it. And once that look started to fall into place, the game started becoming a lot more fun. I think a lot more energy started to come. From the designers to the writers, everything kind of found this voice that I think was a little better. And luckily, 2K, I think, we're a little. Are you serious? Well, that does look really awesome. Okay, let's go with this. And it put a lot of pressure on us, and we did a lot of work pretty darn fast. So it's nice this time around to be able to have that as our starting point rather than changing it again. The look is still essentially the same. There are some new techniques we've been doing. We feel refining the look that we started doing. I mean, I think when you look at it, I think it still says this is Borderlands. It's just as we worked on it and worked on the DLCs, we found new ways to present things that we felt were visually more interesting. And that's one of the things that we're proud about in a game, and that it stands out in a crowd of games with kind of a similar look. And since with the role-playing side and the shooter side of our game together, we feel that's sort of the third piece that really makes us feel unique.
What kind of lessons did you learn from Borderlands 1 that you've taken forward into Borderlands 2?
Yeah, there was a lot of things. Starting a new game is difficult because it's a new IP. Why would somebody want to buy this over a game that's more established? And we're a bit of a challenge. It was having the role-playing side, having the shooter side, having the style. So we learned a lot in the way of that. There was the balancing of, is this too shooter, is this too RPG? Which of those elements is overriding the other? And there was a lot to take in there, and we put it together. We had all these systems that were in place, but the final assembly of it happened very fast. It was a bit of a gamble. Was this going to feel right? Did it feel balanced? And we learned a lot. There was some harsh truths there, and there was some really positive things about it. And we've looked at those and been able to take that into the sequel. With the sequel, having that as a starting point has really allowed us to take a critical eye to some of those things. And just having that base is so much easier than starting again from scratch. So that's been really beneficial to us. One of the things that Borderlands is really known for is its guns. It's the gun generation system. We feel we've made a substantial upgrade in that. The variety in which the guns are now, the manufacturer's identities, the different unique ways that they work, such as the TDR, for example, with not even reloading the gun, just throwing it away and it exploding. And a new one digistructing in your hand. But that risk-reward system of, do I want to throw away 20 bullets with the hope that the explosion that it makes, that is the amount of damage it's going to do to the enemy if I can hit it. And we're trying to put spins like that onto all the guns, and we feel that's a really substantial upgrade there. But on top of that, just the amount of variety we're trying to add in that into the environments, into the enemies, and just making a richer experience from start to finish. We have a whole laundry list of things that we looked at that we're expanding on. The mission structure was a big one. Due to the way that the system was created, we had some limitations in what we could do. Now we have much more control over what can happen in those. There's a lot more variety that can happen. And not only in that, in this one, we've really taken the story of the game, and we've really tried to infuse it more into the actual mission. So a lot of the things you're doing are a little more substantial. They mean something and they propel. So not only are you're grinding, you're leveling up, you're getting all this new cool gear, but you're experiencing a story that's a lot more pushed through the actual actions of what you're doing. So the missions are much more robust this time around, and you're going to be experiencing a much more variety of things as opposed to moving from just A to B or grab this and move here. So it's a lot more diverse this time around. The first time around, we were proud of what we did, but we also made a statement that said the story wasn't going to dominate this game. The game was about that shooter-looter mentality. But we looked at that and said, well, let's take that and still not dominate the player with. We know some people are just playing the game for the fun and the experience. We don't want to stop you for a cutscene all the time. We want you to keep playing as much as possible. So this time, like I sort of had mentioned before, taking that story, infusing it more into the mission structure. So you're watching a lot more events take place in front of you that you're not stopped, such as in the dam area. You're watching a conflict between the Bloodshot bandits and the Hyperion army, the robots. So like that's one of those things that you're in full control. You can choose to pay as much attention to that as you want, or if you want to run in the corner and grab a chest, that's fine. But these things are happening around you, so it's up to your discretion of how much you want out of that. But there's a lot more of that in the game, though, so it's a lot more rich. The world feels a lot more alive for that, I think. So the plot of the first game was essentially these vault hunters trying to find this famed vault, like what's inside this vault. This game takes place 5 years after that vault had been opened. The main antagonist of the game is a guy named Handsome Jack. He's a rather enigmatic guy. Got a lot of charisma. He's kind of a guy you really love to hate. Towards the beginning of the story, he sort of sets you up for failure. He disgraces you, and he just leaves you for dead, and just thinks nothing of you, right? And a lot of this. A lot of what you're doing in this is this constant struggle against him. It's a revenge story at its heart, but throughout that, the experiences that you go through are pretty unique to anything we did from the last time to just the areas that it takes you are really interesting. But yeah, so you're kind of gunning for this guy, and this time around you're a whole new cast. You're a new cast of characters. We've only really been showing Salvador, the Gunzerker right now, and there is a new Siren called Maya, but we're not going into the other characters now. But it's also sort of important to say that the cast that you played from the last game, they're still around, but it's sort of interesting what's been happening in those 5 years. What are they doing? Why are they still here? And that's kind of one of the things we hope the fans, if you play the first game, there's a lot that's calling back to that, but there's never enough that a new player is completely lost of what's going on. So,
what's the reason for the new cast of characters as opposed to sticking with the four that everyone seems to know?
Yeah, that was a big decision to be had. Obviously, you kind of create characters that we get these things. Oh no, like I want to play as Lilith. She's my favorite, but. It was a hard decision for us to make, but we also said if we were true to ourselves and we know that we're making a sequel, we wanted to give the player some new experiences. We wanted them to have something new to look forward to, and we felt that was the best way to do it. But we also didn't want to throw away those characters. That hence the NPC side. A lot of people grew fond of who those characters were. And now it gives us a reason, explanations to build more into some of their past and who they are. So, in fact, the characters are there still, but they're almost, in a way, more interesting because you played as this guy for 50 hours. You love Roland. What's he been up to? Like, oh, that's what he's been up to. So we think that's really intriguing. But it's also just with the new characters come new action skills and. I think a lot more interesting mechanics under the hood of who those characters are and what they can do. Each of the new characters has, the multiple paths they can take inside of their tree. For example, if you take the Salvador, the Gunzerker, the first class we're showing here, he has the ability to dual wield. It's kind of an extension from the Berserker, from Brick, being able to use both of his fists, but we really were like, this is a game about guns, millions of guns in this game. Pick any two you want to hold and shoot. And we felt, well, that's a great promise, right? And we wanted the skill trees themselves to not only support that skill and augment it, but also adding passive skills into who you are and how that can benefit your party. But looking at the other characters, as we're not talking about the skills right now, but they all have a unique way that they complement each other, and there's a lot of diversity in how you can build your character. What we're really sort of shooting for is that even if that is the main action skill of the character, you can take it in these directions to find new ways to use what you're doing. And we find that, for example, the Gunzerker having the skill where the longer you hold down the trigger, the faster the bullets go. And if you're dual-wielding twin miniguns, you're in this rage. They both have clips that are 100 bullets. I mean, you're pretty much invincible, and you're coupling that with the more kills you make, the longer you can stay in your skill. I mean, it's such a blast, and I can't wait for people to see. Like, that sounds great, but what we're doing with some of the other characters, I think the fans are in for. I think everybody's in for a treat. It's a lot of fun.
Have there been any refinements made to the looting system?
Yeah, I mean, as far as that goes, it's still the shooter looter. It's still, I shoot you, you die, you drop things. There's chests over there. What's in there? We really looked at the gear, just like I was talking about the guns, how we really reevaluated those and up them. We're doing the same with the shields, with the comm decks. There's more things that you can find and use, and not only how those work alongside of your skills and how you're building your character around that. There's a lot more gear this time around. There's a lot more opportunity to make unique builds, particularly when you start to talk about the cooperative space on what this character's skill does with their gear. It just is. I really feel like we're leveling up where we were at the last time.
I found something interesting that Steve was saying. He's talking about this whole world in motion thing that he's trying to do in the world tonight. How is it like, because you work in the art scene, how does that make your job a lot harder? How do you do that? How do you bring the world to life?
Yeah, well, it's something that we're all really passionate about, and it's sometimes difficult when you sort of talk about there are levels and zones that are very expansive in the game. It's not a true open world, but it's the world itself is huge, and the zones you're in are. So it's a challenge to look at those and go, how can we breathe life into this? But from the art team, from the designers, we're constantly trying to think of from story beats to these things, like how do we do this? How do we make this not feel static? So and some of that can just come from things blowing, of course, but it's not only that. It's about creating environments, I think, that feel rich. They feel detailed. They feel a lot thicker this time around. They're not quite as sparse, I guess. There's a density to things. There's more things to interact with. There's more, if it's from pistons moving to just natural life happening around you. It's definitely a challenge, but it's one that we really wanted to confront, and we really want you to feel like it's just not the still environment, that as you take that corner, you see something that's always grabbing your attention, and what is that, and why is it doing what it is? As the game goes on, there's more. I mean, you kind of see as you progress across the dam, this moon base firing down at you. That's a little sample of things that will be happening around you, and constant attention-seeking things that, and once again, we're not going to force you to look there, but if we're doing our job right, you want to look at what's happening, and I think people will be in for a treat when they see some of the things that we have planned and that we wish we could show right now.